I made a video last month on all the illustrations I drew for Patreon. Majority of the comments were questions around Patreon itself. So this video is about getting started, choosing your tiers and rewards, how to get patrons, how often to post, and dealing with burnout. I'm Ange, also known as Pikarar. I'm a digital illustrator that likes to dabble in a lot of other things. I write how to draw books, I make stuff and things, and I've been on Patreon for about 3 years with over 600 members. Okay, let's get into it. How to get started on Patreon. I have a lot to say about this section. Let me just preface by saying I debated making a Patreon for years before actually committing, and it's one of those things you just have to do or else you never will. You may never be 100% prepared, but it's better to start somewhere rather than nowhere. Some of the things that kept me up at night were: how do I keep up with monthly content? Should I prepare content ahead of time? Are my tiers worthy of followers? Okay, all valid concerns, but all of these can be flexible. I follow some Patreon creators that only post twice a year or are 3 months late when it comes to sending out rewards. I still look forward to all of their content though. All of this is to say, Patreon is your membership platform. You choose the rules and cadence for how the show runs, so it can be whenever and however you want. But with that said, you can still do research on your favorite creators to gauge what you might like to do or not do. I was definitely the anxious type when I first started out. I wanted to post every month and have new content that would be enticing for my patrons. I actually prepped 4 months of content in advance and even prepared physical rewards like stickers and prints all ahead of time. I ended up not even using any of them because I grew sick of my art very quickly. As someone who is continuously growing and my ideas evolve very quickly, after 4 months it felt like the pre-prepared content was no longer relevant to me. Start somewhere instead of aiming for perfection, at least in the early phases. This is a lesson I learned the hard way. I prepared so much because I wanted a holistic experience for my patrons. I had a monthly newsletter with updates and images on my life, digital wallpapers, speed painting videos on YouTube, an in-depth tutorial on my illustrations, discounts to my private store, and physical rewards like 3 stickers and an illustration that I mailed out every month. Very quickly, I found out that this was way too much work for me to keep up every month. It's valid to want that holistic experience, but this takes us to the next section. Choosing your tiers and rewards. I went hard on what I offered because of imposter syndrome. I felt like my tiers needed to be worth it for people to join. But when I was surveying my community, someone actually said something that stuck with me to this very day. They said, "Patrons will sign up because they like your work and want to support you. Yes, the rewards and discounts are nice, but in the end, these people are here to support you." That really stuck out to me because it changed the way I thought about Patreon. Instead of feeling like a hamster on a wheel, cranking out new merch every month, my perspective shifted towards Patreon is a platform for experimentation. I feel really lucky and am privileged to have supporters that allow me to explore art in ways that are not tied to capitalism. Also, the irony is that I follow creators on Patreon to support them, and although merch and discounts are a bonus, at the end of the day, I'm just happy to see anything that they post, whether it's daily or once a year. So my suggestion for picking tiers and rewards are: 1. Do your research by comparing your favorite creators' tiers and pick the elements you like. You can even reach out to your community and ask them what they would want to see. 2. Consider your bandwidth and energy for monthly content. Don't overpush yourself to the point of burnout. Cap your tiers if you need. I personally do this because I know that packing 200 letters is much more doable than me packing 500 a month. 3. Start simple and somewhere versus aiming for perfection and getting nowhere. You can easily set up one tier and make it a digital newsletter without worrying about sending physical mail. Trust me, your audience is just happy to support you. Okay, let's say you've set up your Patreon. Now you're wondering, how do I get more patrons? Alright, good old marketing and word of mouth. Unlike platforms like Instagram and YouTube, where the algorithm suggests your content to strangers, Patreon requires you to leave its own platform to get people from other platforms to join. And on top of that, it will most likely be your audience that is interested and not strangers. Many people don't know how Patreon works, let alone have an account. It's a big jump for them to change platforms and learn about a new membership type. So here are things to consider. 1. Be clear about what you're offering on Patreon and why is it different from other platforms. For example, you can talk about how it's exclusive content, more personal, more frequent, or give them previews of your rewards. Definitely mention that it directly supports you. 2. Share your Patreon on all your social socials. I know as a creator this can be hard, especially since we just want to draw and not focus on marketing. But the reality is, the only way people can discover your Patreon is if you let them know about it. What I personally do is, at the beginning of the month, I mention on socials that I have new Patreon content and I share a picture on my story. Near the end of the month, I give a reminder that the reward is going away. You can pick your own cadence, but I found that these soft announcements work for me. The next thing I want to mention is how often to post or when to send out physical mail. Going back on what I have already mentioned, Patreon is your platform. So you get to choose how often and when you want to share content. I'm kind of just repeating myself at this point, but I want to make it really clear that it's up to you. If it helps to give an example, this is the frequency that works for me. I aspire to be an on-time girly, so I actually put these dates into my calendar so that I can keep myself in check. Every mid-month, I dedicate 1 to 2 weeks to create art for Patreon. Keep in mind that I am planning for next month's rewards. This gives me time to print or outsource the rewards, which should arrive to me within another 1 to 2 weeks. By the time the next month hits, I have my rewards in hand and am able to ship them to patrons by mid-month, and then this cycle repeats for next month. Of course, sometimes things come up and I do fall behind. I designed the schedule to be able to accommodate for being behind 2 to 3 weeks, so even if I finish the art at the beginning of the month, I can still send them out before the end of the month. But if I'm really late and I'm not able to send rewards until the following month, I just let my patrons know ahead of time and they're always understanding. Thanks guys, I really appreciate it. And if I'm unable to commit entirely, I let my patrons know and pause membership until I'm ready to start again. The longest I paused membership was 3 months, and it was during wedding planning, switching jobs, and con traveling. My patrons were super understanding, and it made me feel good to be able to focus on other things during that time. So don't put so much pressure on yourself when your community is just here to support you. The last thing I want to address is how to avoid burnout every month. Let me share a secret with you guys. I have a formula on how I plan content. Here are the 4 options I give myself. 1. Make things you like. This one seems like common sense, but you'd be surprised. Artists follow trends or focus on what they think other people want to see. If you focus on what you want to make and not what others expect of you, you might be more fulfilled and energized. 2. Challenge yourself with something new. New for me looks like a color scheme, subject, texture, or style that I want to try. It allows me to explore other art forms and even improve my art. 3. This one is arguably the hardest one to get motivation for, which is make the things that you have been putting off. I'm sure we all have a backlog of things we want to create, but maybe we never got time for. Patreon is the place to pursue that. And 4. A bingo free spot option is to just ask your community what they want to see. You can survey this without the expense of option 1 by choosing the response from your community that you look forward to making. But despite all these options, I'ma be real. Sometimes I have no idea what I want to make and I get hit with crazy art block. I freak out and worry I won't make art on time, but I have come to trust in listening to the art block gods. They always are reminding us to take a break, which usually just looks like living life. I go hiking, I hang out with family and friends, I do non-art related things that help build inspiration. You have to live life to make art. And after all that, if burnout is still a struggle, remember that Patreon is supposed to be fun. There is no shame in pausing the membership to focus on recovering. Taking a break to come back will only make you stronger. If I could go back in time to talk to my past self, I would let her know that she doesn't need to prep content in advance, but to focus on creating art that makes her happy. Over the last 3 years, I ended up evolving my Patreon a lot. I started out with so many rewards, and today I only focus on the things that bring me joy. I really resonated with this feedback and have embraced making monthly art for fun. I think the part I dread most about Patreon is actually packing the rewards because I hate tedious tasks. So I'm always grateful for packing parties with friends. But every time I do pack, I am reminded how many patrons there are and am deeply grateful. Thank you guys for supporting me all this time. By now, I'm fortunate enough to remember some of you by name and am able to chat with you frequently on Patreon. And thanks YouTube for watching. I hope this video was helpful. If you enjoyed it, please like and subscribe. You can also check out my Patreon and follow for free. If you are still debating on how to set up your tiers, feel free to add my Patreon to your list of creators you want to research. If you have more questions, comment below and I'd be happy to help. Oh, and let me know what you guys think about the little emotes. I want to tell more stories this way. Alright, bye guys.